I'm Billy S. Today I'm ranking my top 10 boss fights in all of Soulsborne, and let me tell you, narrowing this list down to my 10 favorites was absolutely brutal. There are multiple bosses from across this franchise that I wanted to include, but ultimately had to cut. It all came down to me thinking, what are my 10 favorite bosses? Not necessarily the objectively best bosses in the series, but just the 10 that stick out to me on a personal level. That's my metric for today. And let me tell you, that short list of 40 bosses, it had heavy hitters. The Bloodborne trio of Ludwig, Maria, and Gehrman got cut. Iconic new fights like Moog, Midra, Rolana, and Caligo got cut. Demon Souls and Dark Souls 2 don't even have an entry in today's video. It was a bloodbath. So please, let's go into this video knowing that my ranking will be different to yours and that all of our personal lists are completely valid. Without further ado, my top 10 bosses in all of Soulsborne. Let me know your personal lists down below. At number 10, we have Morgott, the Omen King from Elden Ring, who you fight at the very end of Leyndell, the royal capital. This is my favourite fight from Elden Ring's base game, and has been since launch, and I'm hoping this sets the theme of this video, which is that I don't really care about boss difficulty. Morgott is actually insanely easy for the point in the game you reach him, as he has a woefully underbaked health pool that you can whittle through with a relatively well-designed build, and most players will first or second try him and move on with their lives. But it's the fact that Morgott's fight is personal for the player that really amplifies my enjoyment. You see, Morgott has hounded you through the lands between, targeting you outside Stormveil Castle as Margit, then again in the battlefield outside the capital. However, we don't know his true identity. In fact, conversations in the Round Table Hold about Morgott suggest a man hidden in secrecy, which is a perfect cover, as when you arrive in his boss arena, the reveal that Margit is actually Morgott hits that much harder. He breaks open his staff to reveal Morgott's cursed blade, one of my favourite weapons in the series, and you're thrust into a rematch against a man who likely styled on you for points back in Stormveil. He's got all his light weapons, full unlimited blade works energy, with daggers, spears, hammers, the whole shebang. He can summon a cross of light blades that fall from the skies, which you have to avoid, but then at half health, things take a turn for the ugly. Morgott pukes up the curse within him, coating the ground as he becomes enraged. His sword now flows with a burning fire that FromSoft has become synonymous with in recent years. In a way, he's carrying a little bit of Lady Maria into this top 10, and I think that's beautiful. With his aggression off the charts, this is where you'll be pushed onto the back foot, with his new grab move catching me more times than I care to admit. But eventually, even through all of this, Morgott will go down. You overcome him, for real this time, and you can have one last conversation with him before he passes, where he laments that nobody can become the Elden Lord. The way to the Erdtree's core is blocked. It's almost like a last victory for him over you, getting in that final word before he dies. I didn't even need to go into how Morgott's backstory is unbearably tragic, and how indoctrinated into the Golden Order he was, despite being the very type of person that it was designed to subjugate. Nor do I need to talk about how he got some fun new moves in Elden Ring Nightreign that make his blood flames really cool to fight. But honestly, his boss fight just speaks for itself, and I'm so happy I can rank it in my top 10. At number 9, we have the Orphan of Kos, my favourite boss from Bloodborne. To the gamers who played FromSoft back when Bloodborne's DLC first released, I think we can all agree that there was a before Orphan and an after Orphan when it came to how we thought about the bosses in this series. Because before this, bosses were tough, but they were manageable. Manus, Artorias, Fume Knight, Sir Alon, all fights that tested us to our limits when the only scope we had were the slower first few games in the series. Then Bloodborne came along to amp things up, followed by one of the toughest DLCs they'd release at launch. And who waited at the end but the destroyer of controllers, the Orphan of Kos. His level of aggression was, for the time, ahead of any other boss that had been released. His howling screams became a meme for a reason as he launched himself across the arena, the placenta in his hand outstretched to smack you in the face. His first phase is aggressive, wanting nothing more than to get up in your grill, with a majority of his attack patterns targeting you from the front. My best strategy involved dodging into and around the orphan, getting to his sides where I could avoid his various bonks to get some damage in. But his speed in going from attack to attack means you barely get room to breathe before the placenta extends along the ground and tries to trip you up. His second phase is where the difficulty of the fight truly lies though, as the orphan abandons the simple attack forward strategy and instead begins to leap around the arena like a psychopath. Lightning is called down from the sky, he gains projectiles he can throw at you, and he can summon dark energy from the floor to catch you if you're in the blast radius. All this on top of a hectic camera that can barely keep up with him, and you've got a fight that overwhelmed players hard. It seems almost quaint now, given some of the insane fights we've got in recent years, and nobody would deny that in terms of mechanics, the earlier FromSoft games have been getting outclassed, but Orphan has this sticking power for me, be it from the design of the boss or the unique arena, that I just adore. And yes, because it is my humble brag, I did beat Orphan first try on my first ever attempt. Let me have this is all I have left. At number 8, we have Knight Artorias, my favourite boss of Dark Souls, and the final boss from the early era of Soulsborne to make it on today's list. I simply couldn't imagine featuring my top 10 bosses in the series without allowing Artorias the opportunity to shine in the spotlight one more time. Because as FromSoft ventures further forwards, we stray further away from some of the bosses who used to be the pillars of this community, and I refuse to forget them. Artorias was one of the first truly tragic figures in Soulsborne lore who would eventually go on to become a DLC boss fight, in the same vein as Ludwig from Bloodborne or Miquella from Elden Ring. Artorias fought against the Abyss, becoming known as the Abyss Walker to the people of Lordran. He was a proud, powerful knight who fought for the good of the realm, but eventually found himself bested by the primordial Manus. Saving his pet wolf, he succumbed and was corrupted, twisted into a creature of darkness whom we have to defeat if we wish to enter Ulasil. From his intro where he impales a bloated resident, to his aura-farming drip, you just know you're in for a tough time. And keep in mind, this version of Artorias was severely wounded from his battles, one-handing his sword due to a broken arm, and yet still finding the time to demolish you again and again and again. What I love about Artorias is how his moveset isn't terribly complex, but each move feels distinct. You've got the jump slam he uses to make distance, you've got his forward thrusts, you've got his regular melee combos where he can follow up with some abyssal goop. My favourite attack is, and will always be, his mid-air somersaults, flipping forwards and slamming his sword down up to 3 times in a row. It's an attack I wish we could use as the player because the animation is just so iconic to me. Midway through the fight, he can buff himself to make his attack stronger, and this can have disastrous effects if you let it go through. Instead, you need to stun him out of his power-up to keep him at regular damage, unless you're too far away when he begins charging, in which case prepare for trouble and make it double. I really enjoy when buffs don't introduce new abilities, but just enhance the moveset that's already there, and that's what gives Artorias enough sauce to stand out in Dark Souls. It's a very slow game, and he's one of the first bosses to move more like a Dark Souls 3 boss in comparison to the base game of Dark Souls, so he doesn't need an overly crazy moveset because he's already at a massive advantage. He represents what the future of the series would soon become, and set the blueprint for most bosses to follow, and on top of that, he is just one of my favourite characters across video games. I couldn't leave him off of this list. At number 7, we have Libra, Creature of Night, from Elden Ring Nightreign, the newest boss on this list, and one who may still potentially climb further if that looming Everdark Sovereign variant actually enhances the fight. Recall what I said a minute ago, I really enjoy when buffs don't introduce new abilities, but enhance movesets that already exist. Libra is built with this concept in mind, and he executes it to perfection. You start the fight with Libra in regular form with a handful of melee attacks, as well as his signature madness spells. You've got the Sigil that shoots madness orbs forwards at the player, you've got landmines that explode shortly after spawning, and you've got the gold he summons from his hand which floats down in a ring around him. All of these attacks are fairly manageable at the start, with the only danger being the landmines, which can still decimate a player who doesn't dodge correctly. Libra will also walk between the players on your team, giving you all equal focus, which I like for a multiplayer game. Eventually though, he will begin to meditate, and you need to stagger him out of this trance, either by destroying the sigils he summons around him, or by hitting him with a strong enough ultimate to break his concentration. Do this, and Libra enters a brief enraged state where the creature emerges. His melee combos become bestial, and the way he summons madness involves ripping it from the ground or tearing at it from the sky. He can create flashbangs to block the player's view. It's all pretty intense. But when you think about the alternative, you should be glad he's flailing around like a beast. If you let him power up, all of his madness spells get stronger. The sigils that launch orbs now rotate clockwise until they vanish. The landmines are more aggressive and more are summoned in an outwards pattern. The gold nugget circles expand with more of them appearing on each cast, and Libra takes less damage as his resistance is buffed. He also has an ultimate move where a madness storm buffets the arena, and you have to collect the gold on the ground to stave off the madness buildup, which is a great way to include resource management in the fight. Either state eventually ends with him returning to his base form, but for less and less time per cycle. This incentivizes you to get that damage in early and learn the moveset, otherwise you're just wasting time and draining resources, especially if you and your teammates keep getting knocked down. I had to ultimately pick between Libra or Midra for this spot, as I adore both fights and they both focus on madness, but Libra's mechanics appeal to me a tad bit more, and that's what lands him on this list. But let it be known, Midra would be like number 12, right behind Lady Maria at number 11. At number 6, we have the twin princes, Lorien and Lothric, from Dark Souls 3. The final Lord of Cinder that you have to defeat in order to reach the Kiln of the First Flame, these two princes will make you work for that victory with a tough moveset that can catch many players off guard their first time through. Lorien is on his own for phase 1, warping throughout the arena into different positions so he can strike you down. He's got regular melee swings that feel great to roll through, he's got a downward slam where he appears above you in an ambush, he's got a forward thrust that almost always catches me off guard, and he can even summon flames you have to roll through to avoid. The move you need to watch out for though is when he warps away, as he'll begin charging a massive energy slam that flows in a straight line through the arena, and if you get clipped by it, you're gonna take a lot of damage. What I love about this phase though is how fun it is to learn. Locking onto Lorien lets you see where he teleports to when it's close by, allowing you to plan for his next attack. And when he vanishes somewhere else, you know he's either gonna ambush you from above or use the big light beam so you can adapt. It takes a lot of effort and skill, but once you manage it, no-hitting this phase feels fantastic. Then the second phase hits, where Lothric joins the fight, and the battle is relatively similar with the addition of Lothric's magic. He can summon extra magic orbs to attack the player, which you'll need to dodge to avoid, and he can also blast you point blank with his variant of a soul arrow, which often combos with his brother's attacks. The pillars are great for avoiding the trickier magic projectiles, but they're not foolproof, forcing you to really lock in here, and the only way to win the fight is to beat Lothric himself. Depleting Lorien's health bar will knock the pair down, allowing you to hurt Lothric, but not for terribly long. Or you can hit the younger brother with some careful positioning, as you can strike him while he's riding the older brother in battle, a nice touch. But why this boss lands this high on the list is maybe a bit more personal. See, the first time I played Dark Souls 3, this was where I got to, and then I remained stuck on this pair for a while. The moveset wouldn't click with me, the runbacks were getting tedious, to the point where I dropped the game for a few months. Then I came back, motivated by the fact that my 9-year-old nephew had recently beaten the game himself, and he was giving me this look that was like, "You really can't beat that? Really, Billy?" So I finally defeated the twin princes with barely a scratch on me. Replaying this fight in Soul Level 1 recently only further enhanced what I thought, that this is one of the most fair fights in the game, and that it feels insanely satisfying to master. It's a feel-good battle and a personal slice of heaven for me in this series, and has turned into a real comfort fight in any Dark Souls 3 run, and that's enough to bring it this high in my rankings. At number 5, we have the Soul of Cinder, the final boss of Dark Souls 3. As someone who was introduced to this series through Dark Souls 2, then going back to play Dark Souls, it meant I was in the perfect spot to enjoy everything Dark Souls 3 had to offer. From the constant fan service and theories brought to life, like Anor Londo reappearing, or the Nameless King being revealed as Gwyn's firstborn, it was like Christmas. But nothing could have prepared me for that first encounter with the final boss, the Soul of Cinder, a being who was made up of the countless souls that linked the fire across the generations, a being who was made up of the past players from Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2, a being who represented everything that we had worked towards since the beginning of this trilogy. Phase 1 is FromSoft at their most experimental, allowing the boss to have a variety of different movesets that it can switch to at a moment's notice. You've got a curved sword pyromancer, you've got the traditional sorcerer, you've got the giant spear miracle, and you've got the regular sword. The list goes on. Learning the first phase of this boss is all about adapting to whatever it chooses to throw at you, and each of these movesets felt familiar because we've seen countless players using these exact builds to blast their way through the previous games. The backflip in the curved sword moveset that was ripped from the Darkwood Grain Rings animation from Dark Souls was a stroke of genius. But you could also call Soul of Cinder a jack of all trades, master of none, and this is reflected by how you are eventually able to best as Phase 1, only to be met with a Phase 2 that left the fanbase in shambles. A remix of Gwyn's theme begins to play in the background as the Soul of Cinder adopts the moveset of the Lord who started it all, the Lord of Cinder himself who sacrificed his own life to keep the fire going back in Dark Souls. We're facing the souped up version of Gwyn. He's got a host of enhanced spells to rock your world, with the lightning spear becoming a goddamn lightning storm with how they fall down on you. He still has his signature grab, though I found the dodge timing to be pretty lenient here, and most importantly of all, he's got his wombo combo, where if you're caught in it, you simply must accept your imminent damage and potential death. Experiencing all of this within a game that is more built around combat is a magical experience that cannot be understated, but a large part of this comes from the build-up to Dark Souls 3 before release. This was to be the end of the trilogy. We couldn't even conceived of a concept like Sekiro or Elden Ring or Nightreign or the Duskbloods. It was the end of an era. So to see it celebrated on such a pedestal by honouring the final fight of the first game, which had long been immortalised as one of the greats, there was nothing like it. This fight may not hit newer fans of the series because you simply don't have that connection that came with waiting for this game to release, and that's okay. But it is that very connection that helps to bring Soul of Cinder to such lofty heights in my heart, and lands him in the top half of today's video. At number 4, we have Messmer the Impaler from Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. Everyone's favourite depressed baby girl has managed to slam into the big leagues with his 18 inches, and even though it's been a while since I last played the Erdtree DLC, I've gotta say, Messmer has remained ever present. He is a fight with a perfect balance between difficulty and ingenuity, with FromSoft finally taking a proper crack at a spear wielder for one of their flagship fights, as looking back across their rogues gallery of bosses, there are hardly any who can match Messmer's penchant for impaling. What we get is an impressive moveset that blends the type of attacks you'd expect, like ferocious prods and pokes, alongside some of the more fun moves like whirling the spear around and doing crazy acrobatics like he's in a Dynasty Warriors game. His featured move, where he goes into a crazy combo and stabs, pokes, and then slams the ground, causing spears to erupt from below, is one of the all-time greats, and feels so satisfying to learn and master. His opening fireball attack is also one I enjoy, as learning the dodge timing gives you a window to do some damage before he begins skating around the arena. In fact, Messmer is all about finding those little pockets to get damage in and figuring out how to push the boundaries to get what you want. He may seem overwhelming at first, but it doesn't take as long as you'd expect to begin picking up on his patterns, which Phase 2 just continues. Messmer, choosing to abandon the grace of his mother, shatters her protection rune and unleashes the abyssal serpent within. Now all his attacks have a snake element to them, with him being able to summon large serpents to snap at you with their jaws, often as a way to extend previous combos. But almost all of these attacks can be blocked, dodged through, or lead into attacks you do know from Phase 1, allowing you multiple opportunities to punish the boss. I also think that he loses a little bit of the spontaneity from his first half with more predictable moves that makes his second phase a little easier by comparison. At least I struggle more with Phase 1 than I do Phase 2, but that doesn't change that the difficulty feels perfectly balanced for this encounter to provide a real challenge the further into the fight you get. All the while, you've got a banger theme playing in the background which serves to hype this encounter up even further. And you have to take into account, Messmer may not be the final boss of this DLC, but he was the one with all the promo material. He's the character referenced by a majority of the NPCs for his crusades in the Land of Shadow. He is a character who, by definition, has been hyped up by the DLC during your journey. So having a successful payoff is the cherry on top to what was already a fantastic fight. Combine that with his absolutely tragic lore involving his mother, who abandoned him in her desire to shatter the Elden Ring, while forcing him to commit atrocities in her name, and you have a very complex character to boot. He's still a dictator, and he's not a redeemable character for all the crimes he's committed in Marika's name, but then the Horn Scent weren't much better. It's a cycle of violence that neither side comes out looking great on. But he has beautiful hair and an adorable snake pet, so who's really winning here? At number 3, we have Slave Knight Gale from Dark Souls 3, the final boss developed for the Dark Souls trilogy. Gale started out as a side character introduced in the Ashes of Ariandel DLC, who sucks you into his lady's painting with the goal of freeing Ariandel from Sister Freed. But Gale wants to go further. The painter wants to create a new world, and the only pigment she can use is that of the Dark Soul itself. And Gale, being the best uncle who ever lived, sets out to play 10D chess to get her that pigment. He travels to the Ringed City, guiding you on your path so that you might meet him at the end of the world, after he's drained the blood of the Pygmy Lords and become a hulking beast all of his own. His plan all along was for you to face him down, defeat him, and claim the blood of the Dark Soul that was forming within his own body. And if that's not playing 25D chess, then I don't know what is. Slave Knight Gale is ultimately one of the toughest fights in Dark Souls 3, as Gale has an inflated health bar that asks you to lock in for an extended period of time to have a chance at taking home the victory. Phase 1, he's animalistic, launching across the dunes with a snarl and a ferocity that just isn't human. His sword swings are bombastic and filled with rage. He slams at the ashen floor and tries to impale you on his tip so he can launch you away. He's got follow-ups you won't expect, and I had to learn them all for my Soul Level 1 run, where I got very up close and personal with Gale's moveset. Facing him on a regular playthrough, he's not actually as hard as he seems, but facing him on Soul Level 1 where one wrong move can end the attempt, it is a different story. The true nature of the fight hits when the mid-battle cutscene plays. Gale regains some humanity, stands up straight, and allows the darkness within him to fester. Now he wields his massive greatsword like a powerful warrior, while also whipping out a brand new crossbow with unlimited ammo, as well as a powerful red cape that can whip into flames and spirits. His attacks are fast but weighty, and when you get hit, you can often pinpoint your own mistake. The only attack I found particularly frustrating were his Discus of Light, where he launches 3 discs that eventually retreat back towards him. For some reason, this attack always threw me off my rhythm, leading to some damage I knew I could have avoided. But if you handle this, he'll eventually enrage in the last third of the fight, having this ultimate attack where skulls fly forth from his body as the Dark Soul churns inside him, threatening to burst forth. Lightning strikes the arena, one of the biggest arenas in the series, might I add, and it all leads to a climactic final battle where one of you must come out on top. The atmosphere, the moveset, the music, it all comes together to create a fight that is utterly spectacular while pushing the limits of Dark Souls 3's combat system. And your reward is the blood of the Dark Soul, the namesake of the trilogy itself. A fitting send-off. It may not be my favourite fight in the franchise, but it is one of the most impactful, and feels like it set the tone for the type of fights we'd soon see throughout Elden Ring and beyond. At number 2, we have Baal the Dread, my favourite boss fight in Shadow of the Erdtree, and honestly, I'm surprised to see him rank so highly in my top 10. After all, he's a fight that's only been out for over a year, he's a beast-type boss, which I typically don't gravitate towards, as evidenced by how Libra is the only other boss in my top 10 to be remotely bestial, and yet Baal just sticks with me, in a way that pushes bosses like Messmer and Midra aside. It starts with the build-up, as you meet NPCs like Egon and the Dragon Priestess who tell you of foul Baal. Then it continues as you begin your ascent of the Jagged Peak, the skies turning a darkened orange, before going full stormy as you get past the arena of Senesax and out onto the upper cliffs. Lightning strikes the ground, the wind whips up, but you keep climbing on and on past the corpses of various creatures until you finally reach the arena at the top, a serene field of flowers, no wind, no storm. It's eerily silent. And then Baal, in all his glory, drops down to greet you. This is clearly the most evil dragon they've ever designed. He wears the severed heads of Placidusax as a trophy, and despite missing various body parts, still commands an aura of malice that suggests he will fuck you up. His moveset's really fun to me, with his charge bite you can dodge for a follow-up attack, only to have him combo into claw swipes. I love the move where he leaps away and attempts to tail swipe you as he jumps back, and the various melee combos are really satisfying to learn. The only attacks that gave me real problems involved his fire breath, because annoyingly enough, the arena has some odd geometry issues that causes the fire breath's physics to glitch out. So sometimes his fire will clip weirdly outwards, hitting you when you shouldn't have gotten hit. It's a small complaint, it never happens anywhere else in the game, and I can tell it's not intentional, but who the fuck cares? Because when you do dodge his flames, it can feel very satisfying to pull off. This leads into his enraged state, where he grows spectral wings thanks to his own sheer power, and begins flying around the arena launching fireballs, slamming into the ground, and causing as many AoEs as he wants. All his moves get souped up at this point, forcing you to play carefully as you figure out which combos mean getting in close, and which mean backing the heck up. I love when he charges an area-wide AoE and you time the roll perfectly to dodge through it, getting some hits in after. Or how about dodging his ultimate attack, where he launches 2 sweeping fire breaths across the arena, where you need to not only avoid the fire, but also the explosion that comes after. It's one of the trickiest moves to time, but feels perfect to manage. Baal, to me, feels like Midir to Dark Souls 3 fans. In fact, every Soulsborne fan will imprint on a single dragon fight that they feel is absolutely peak, and for me, Baal is that dragon fight. Ironic, given prior to this it was Placidusax, his worst enemy. And this fight can be enhanced as well by the presence of Egon as a summon, who delivers some of the most quotable and beautifully voiced dialogue in the entire series. His voice actor had no idea what he was getting himself into, but fully leaned into the campiness and theatrics of it all, and made Egon a literal legend. Baal is the perfect foil for this ruined man. I adore everything about this fight. It may have more glaring flaws than some of the entries we've already covered, but that's okay. I can still consider Baal my favourite fight in Elden Ring while acknowledging his flaws, because it doesn't change how excited he makes me feel when I step into that ring, and that is my ultimate metric. But there's one boss in the series that beats him out. At number 1, we have Isshin the Sword Saint from Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. All hail my favourite boss in all of Soulsborne. A few years ago, I did a video ranking every final boss in the series, and Isshin ultimately came out on top. It's a good video, would recommend by the way. But did I expect him to also come out on top when it came to ranking every boss in the franchise? Honestly, I knew he'd be in the top 5. But putting him here in the number 1 spot feels extremely surreal. The bosses I love in this series tend to be fluid, they don't always stick around, and my top 10s tend to change with each playthrough I do, but there's something so inherently magical about Ishin to where I still remember the intense adrenaline and excitement of my very first time. See, I was streaming Sekiro on my old Twitch channel, BillyBay10k. It was my way of forcing myself to beat the game, having given up a prior playthrough after the Guardian Aim. And playing this game for a second time, everything started to click. The combat was more rewarding, I loved using shinobi prosthetics to enhance the boss fights, and I blasted my way through the game until we finally reached the end. Genichiro's brief appearance is nothing to write home about, and honestly I'd be fine if we killed him once and that was it, but forcing us to take him down every time we want to fight Ishin only enhanced the difficulty of the encounter. This was the first 4-phase boss fight in the series to my knowledge, and that level of challenge came at the right time for me. It was at a point in my Soulsborne career, shall we say, when I was craving that difficulty. Whereas nowadays I'm a little more fatigued by the constant chase for challenge. What I loved about Ishin though is that he was the perfect difficulty and there were still ways to make his fight easier. His first form with the sword can be easily countered with a ton of sidestepping to avoid the more dangerous charged attacks, and if you can learn the timings to his various wind slice moves, you can get some real good posture damage in. It's all about being aggressive and knowing what distance from the boss you need to be in order to manipulate his moveset. His second form is where I struggled because he pulls out a massive spear, which I found a lot of trouble deflecting. I often fish for specific moves by running away from the boss to a certain distance. That way I can get the attacks I know I can counter. It's also just a really good way to heal. It's tough to figure out which part of the animation is the damaging part of his spear for me, and he can follow up a lot of these attacks, by the way, with a brand new gun. And we all know that guns hurt. A lot. It's funny the first time, terrifying every time afterwards. This leads into his final form, where now he adds lightning attacks to his repertoire, and this can either be a hindrance or a boon to the player. If you know how to lightning reversal, this fight can be over in a couple hits. If you never mastered it, which I would understand as it's a woefully underutilized mechanic in the game, you're gonna struggle, and try to dodge the lightning and fight him normally, which is a lot rougher. But learning to reversal is so satisfying when it clicks, with your only care needing to be placing yourself in a good spot in the arena so you don't get fucked over by the elevation changes. All of this then leads to a final moment where Ishin collapses into a kneeling state and awaits his fate, with you delivering the final blow. It's not just that you're overcoming a character who you've seen as a mentor during the game, nor you overcoming the character who gave you your name Sekiro, but it's overcoming a character who didn't want to be reborn. He was forced into this role by Genichiro, his grandson, and the Dark Mortal Blade, and yet he wasn't allowed to back down due to the pact. He had no choice but to go all out against us and pray that Sekiro had the skills to overcome him at his best. And we do. Ishin for me strikes the perfect balance as a difficult boss who doesn't lean too far into the difficulty side to where I can enjoy mastering the fight. Take bosses like Melania or Promised Consort at launch, who were so difficult that I couldn't take as much pleasure when I beat them because I was too overwhelmed with everything that brought me to those moments. The journeys were so brutal, they overshadowed a lot of the satisfaction of winning. With Ishin, that wasn't the case. He was brutal but manageable, and I found a perfect sense of satisfaction bringing him down. Ishin Ashina, the Sword Saint, is my favorite boss in all of Soulsborne. And that's my list. There are some real heavy hitters that didn't make it on, so share with me below which bosses you feel I didn't include that you would include in your personal top 10s. And be sure to parry that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all my future videos. My social medias are on screen now. You can follow me over on Blue Sky, over on Twitch, or you can join my Discord. All good ways to keep up with the channel. A massive shout out to my YouTube channel members, by the way. Thank you for supporting me for another month. You guys are amazing. It's $4.99, and I'll see you all next time for another video. Adios.